And welcome on into the Check Your Brain podcast with me, your host, Tony Mazur. Wherever you are listening to this, whether it's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, until they boot me, and Patreon, if they boot me for everything else going on. You never know in this climate that we have. Again, yes, Tony Mazur with the Check Your Brain podcast. Also going on YouTube, Rumble, and Locals. Kind of, we just, in this podcasting world, you just have to just put yourself out there anywhere if you can find anything. It's not like back in the day of being a radio host where you're like, I'm on one station and one station only, and if you missed me at this time, well, sucks to be you. Now we got to kind of spread ourselves all over the place. And I'm with a fellow podcast host, the host of the Rico Podcast. And first of all, it's good to have you on. Thanks for doing this. Talk about the podcast, everything. So we get the plug out of the way first, then we get to the meat and potatoes, and then we plug again at the end. That's the way I look at it.
No, I appreciate it. First of all, thank you for having me. It's always weird when people want to talk to me, because I don't feel I'm that interesting. So I always appreciate when people want to sit down and talk, and I love talking. So, it kills two birds with one stone. But my name is Ricardo Aviles. I'm the host of the Rico Podcast, among many other things. And yeah, man, if you got some homie stories that you want to tell, just listen to us and send those in. And pretty much what we are about is talking about stories about your friends, man. We've had some pretty cool people like Mr. Tommy Chong, Mr. Hankin, Jeffrey Mark, and a lot of other pretty interesting people. We're up to 160 episodes now.
That's great.
Yeah, a lot of work, man. But that's what I kind of do for a living, man.
That's I've talked to people who also do fellow podcasters, and it's interesting trying to navigate the waters of trying to find your niche. Like, what is it that sets my podcast apart from another person's podcast? And you kind of go down the line. You go, well, I guess my podcast might be kind of like somebody else's, but it's a little bit different because I have a co-host, or I do it solo, and then I include video and do all this stuff. So we're all in this weird area of, we don't know what the next thing is going to be. So we're just trying to enjoy ourselves in the current present day that we can get a podcast going.
Yeah, I look at it more as like as a comic and stuff like that. It's more about like creating content in a way that I enjoy it, because I'm a conversationalist type of person, and it's just always been who I am. And to me, it's one of the best ways, kind of like radio back in the day, except you're not regulated by FCC yet.
Yes, for now. Although sometimes it's weird when you think about how far radio has come and how far everything else in the pendulum has swung, where in the days of the shock jock stuff of like the glory days of Howard Stern or Opie and Anthony and some of the big shows, that there were things that were said on terrestrial radio, whether locally or syndicated, and you would hear them in the present day and go, they got away with that. They got away with that too. They said that on the air, and now we're like, forget about it.
Yeah, no, I'm still, my whole thing is the rule of thumb that I try to follow with what my podcast is, I try not to go after people with shit, right? So like a lot of those shows, their main thing is the one thing I love about those old shows and about like the Tonight Show and like all these shows is one thing they do really beautifully that I enjoy is they're genuinely interested in hearing about a person's day. And even if it is fake, man, then they're faking it pretty fucking well, better than my ex did. So to me, it's like, that's one thing that I enjoyed about it. But at the same time, I also want to like have something where people can promote things. Cause like, I feel where I do best is when I'm promoting other people or listening to their stuff. Cause man, you talk to people like on one-on-one, dude, and people are pretty cool, man. It's whenever there's like too many of us. And I noticed that in the military myself, like, it's like, dude, you get 10 of us and it gets weird.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. When you're in a group, like, don't they say that where you said if you gave 10 people $1 each and put them in a room for an hour, and then one person's going to leave with all $10? It's one of those weird things when you get into that group setting.
Yeah. And that's why I kind of like, I'm a really big introverted person, unfortunately. Like it's really difficult for me to want to go out because I have kind of everything I need in my house and everything I want. So it's like, it's always weird to me when I see all these podcast guys that go out to Comic-Cons and stuff like that. But apparently that works, man. Like we have a new sponsor on our show. It's a dispensary called Blue Medicinals that they're great with veterans, man. It's like 35% off for veterans. And I got to tell you, man, like trying to promote a show in person is a little bit more different than on the air, dude.
Oh yeah.
Like it's a whole nother experience, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and I saw that working in radio when you'd have someone who calls in and says, you know what, I disagree. You know, you're a moron. And then you just start going back and forth. And I think a lot of people don't think about it. And they say, dude, you just lost a listener. You lost a listener. He'll never listen to this radio station again because you fought. And they're like, yeah, whatever. He's a jackass anyways. But now in the podcast game, especially if you're going out to promote your podcast or promote your show and which is your brand. I hate saying that, but it's true.
No, you're right. You're 100% right. I tell
you're losing a customer.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, but the other thing is like you have to know where the line in the sand is. And that's why I tell a lot of people, like, you got to know where the line in the sand is. Cause there's certain times like having a weed dispensary as a sponsor. That's a line in the sand that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, not listening to that. Cause that's not, what I'm into. But a lot of times, yeah, man, I don't argue with people. I've had weird things been sent to the podcast page and I just don't. I think someone one time said, y'all ain't funny. You should go back to your hobo hillbilly town and go be a farmer. And I was like, well, I'm from Puerto Rico. So I think you meant Jibaro. And like I just like looked at that and I was like, I'm not answering this. Like, because I'll just get a back and forth and roast you. And then, man, I don't want to be a name in anybody's list. So I try to be nice to people.
Well, let's get into that because I think your story is fascinating. I was reading up on you and talking about the translation business and the trafficking and your story. And I know you've probably talked about it in your podcast so many times. You're probably I don't know if you're tired of talking about it, but since you're doing my podcast, I'd love. It's one of those like I hate to do it to you if I may impose, but talk about that because it's a fascinating story and your background is fascinating.
I appreciate it. My background is it was pretty cheap. It was just $10. I don't know if you see the curtains. They need to be ironed.
Joanne Fabrics, right?
No, these are sound dampening curtains. They are expensive. And then there's a drop behind that that's also soundproof. Like we're basically enclosed in here.
You got a nice little compound, a little bunker.
Yeah. This is where we record all the gangbangs. And we do all the things that we do. But no, man, I appreciate saying that. Most people do not find my line of work interesting at all. So I always appreciate when someone wants to talk about my line of work. And secondly, I don't talk much about it on the podcast. I really don't. There's been episodes we've touched upon it because people Google me, and like if you Google Language Ninja Spanish, moi is the one who pops up. So yeah, man, what would you like to know about? What would your listeners like to know?
Just about the background, like you're from Puerto Rico, but you like outside of the whole podcasting and doing comedy and everything like that, this is your job and you speak to a lot of people and you're helping solve crimes. You're helping a lot of this stuff. And it's really fascinating because you're somebody that you are a definite asset. So it's not like you're just some asshole podcaster just hanging out going like, yeah, I think I'll just start a podcast and just talk into a microphone for a little bit. You actually have some kind of background and some life experience that you can put behind this and put this out there. So talk a little bit about your background and just what you do and what you've done. And, any of that fun stuff and I use that in quotes that you've dealt with.
What I'm known for is for interpreting for child trafficking victims. I did that for a little over 3 years, very, very, very regularly, almost on a daily basis for the state of Missouri, for other states outside of Missouri, for private entities, 501(c)(3)s, if you will. So like charities such as Freedom's Rest, the Harder House, Casa Violencia, which is like a domestic violence shelter and stuff like that. And then I work with certain CPS organizations and with law enforcement, pretty much as an interpreter, translating and interpreting for trafficking victims. Fortunately for my luck, I would say, I ended up getting labeled, and I was the guy that when interpreters couldn't mentally handle something, I would get called, and then I would go and interpret and do my thing. And I had a lot of cases. I had a lot of child trafficking cases. I actually have a story about a child of war, which is part of trafficking, if you will. And I'll actually send you here because you've been so kind. Let me send you the course that I actually put together so you can have that and you can share it with your friends
absolutely.
and stuff like that. So what I came to be known as was pretty much like the language ninja, the guy who pretty much you go and talk to if you need someone to if you need to interpret for something that's pretty high stress. You also need to have a very cool head when you're interpreting for these kids because a lot's happening. Obviously, as a good interpreter, you should never get involved and say anything. So it was really difficult looking back now. Like when the kids would try to talk to me, I'd have to break character and be like, please don't address the interpreter. You can't address the interpreter. You have to talk to them like I'm not here. And that's where the language ninja came because interpreters are like ninjas. If you look up any political figure throughout history, you'll see that the picture's always centered, right? When they're sitting on chairs. If you zoom out that picture, you'll see the interpreters.
Okay.
So we're like the flies on the walls. We know everything. And for interpreters, luckily, a good interpreter has a vow of neutrality where there's certain things that you just don't talk about until the NDA expires. And then after that, you can talk about it on a podcast and tell cool stories.
What's a normal NDA for that? Like what's the time frame? Or is there what is it case by
most
case?
of them, most of the ones that I signed were until the case was done.
Okay. So I
which
didn't
was
know
like over
statute
100.
limitations. Yeah.
There's like things that I've done with other 3-letter agencies that the statute of limitations of those haven't passed. And I don't even joke about that stuff. Like there was one time, and I can talk about this one now. There was one time that I got called from a 3-letter agency, and they wanted me to interpret for this man that was in a hospital bed. And I'm like, I'm not a medical interpreter. And they're like, we don't need you for medical. And the dude started talking. It turns out he was a sicario, a killer. And he, from what I interpreted, obviously, which I recall this, he had ran because they tried to kill him because he knew too much and they thought he was an informant. So then he came to the US with like papers and stuff like that. And he had a lot of names and stuff like that. And then after that, they used someone else. So I don't know where that case went, which happens a lot of the times, unfortunately, for most interpreters. So that's like the wildness of like my life during that time. And then obviously I was in the military and I went to war and all that other crap. But yeah, man, hopefully that answers that.
So in the topic of trafficking, I guess we'll get serious right now. Is that you drive in a major city? I'm not far from Cleveland, and you go by these major cities. There's billboards that said "Stop human trafficking," "Stop child trafficking," and you kind of look up and go, "Yeah, we should probably do that," and then you just keep driving.
Yep.
How bad is it, really? I mean,
it's pretty fucking bad.
But is it like, because and I want to get your thoughts on the Eliza Blue situation, because that's been kind of interesting about what's
the what? I'm sorry.
The Eliza Blue. She's the one who was the that said she was trafficked, but when they start to realize it's like, it's more so that her image was used in certain things. So we don't have to get into that, talking about that, but it was it's fascinating when you think about what we don't know about it. It's just, oh, hey, there's human trafficking that goes on, but we don't really know the extent of it, where it's coming from, where the major centers are, why it continues to happen, even though we're in a digital age when a lot of people should probably be a little bit more on the pulse. Like, I guess how bad is it? Where is this really coming from? Is there like a hub for it? And pardon my ignorance on it. I don't know. I must live a very privileged, sheltered life here.
No. This is perfect. This is like 99% of the people that I talk to. At least you're not the one telling me that this only happens in movies, which I've had people tell me that before. If you look at no. Which, by the way, Liam Neeson, great actor. Fuck, great actor. God, Liam Neeson, like shit, So if you pull up what I sent you, right? Um, So like the first thing is like most people, if I asked you to define human trafficking, could you? Like, what do you think
I
human
think a
trafficking is?
very like first grade level of that we feel that it's human trafficking are people kind of like smuggled into through across a border in a trunk or inside a truck or whatever, and they're let loose or they're under some kind of enslavement of being, used for sexual matters or for whatever the case. I think
So
that's
you're
how I would
close.
think. I think a lot of people would believe.
So you're close, right? So when we talk about human trafficking is basically defined as when you're recruiting, you're keeping, or the correct wording would be harboring, you're transporting or trafficking people by forcing them, coercing them, lying to them, deceiving them, being fraudulent with things, abusing your power and your position, uh, or just to collect as a form of payment, right?
Mm.
So trafficking can be divided into many things, and I don't have the slides in front of me, so that's why I keep looking up and down trying to like memorize. So there we go. So if you scroll down to the third slide, right there. So as you can see, trafficking. Yes, I had it right. Okay. And that's the most important part right here that people don't understand is everybody says, oh, what's the difference between kidnapping and trafficking? Well, here's the thing. We'll get into that. But the main thing is that human trafficking can be divided into many things, right? It can be human trafficking, which is the transportation, harboring of people, right? Under forced coercion, debt, abuse of power, abuse of position, and or for payment or collection, or for commercial sexual act, right? That's human trafficking. Human trafficking can be divided into sex trafficking, organ trafficking, child trafficking, and a couple other things, which I know is horrible, but it does happen. Me personally, I don't talk about cases that I've never done. So I've never had a organ trafficking case myself, but I know that there's websites like the Silk Net or Silk Web or something like that that happened years ago that the FBI took down. That was like a huge thing where you could go on and you could find organs and stuff like that, right?
Is that where something like, for example, if you drugged a woman at a bar and then she wakes up in a bathtub with a bunch of ice in it and they took her kidney or her pancreas out?
Well, that's a lot. I've never personally had a case or I've never personally had any experience with that, but that wouldn't surprise me. But you also have to understand that and this is the really hard part to swallow where I will lose a lot of people. And I want to make this very clear. These people that traffic and stuff, they're not fucking human. Like they really aren't. And the way that they view human beings is as cattle, right?
Hmm.
So let's say, and again, this is where I lose people. So bear with me. The younger someone is, especially if they're a female, I can have another human being. And then after that, I can use them for prostitution. I can use them to transport drugs. I can use them or train them to recruit other people so that way they can gain their freedom. So it's just a perpetual cycle that people don't break, right? So then what ends up happening is that people get into this mess of like, well, what about pimping? What about this? And I'm like, listen, the main thing that you have to understand is if you scroll down, we can pull that one up, is that when we're talking about human trafficking is like there's some elements. There's a process, a means, and an end game, right? So and I like this little chart, by the way. Shout out to the Freedom Network Training Institute for that chart because it's beautifully done. The process is basically where I'm trying to find these people, move them, or gain people in order by using force, fraud, coercion, abuse of power, and or payment, right? Or for payment. And the end game of that is basically for either a commercial sex act, which I'll explain that in a minute, or labor services. That's what you can divide those two. Because it could be like the babysitter, like which there's stories about that, like people who had like the babysitter that was always around the house, and turns out they were holding that person's visa or their green card or their K-9 or whatever it was. And they were like, well, you got to clean the house. So that's indentured servitude, which is for labor.
Yeah.
A commercial sex act is basically when a person pays for an act, right? Pays for sex. By utilizing force, fraud, coercion, and or in order to gain monetary gains or pleasure, which that's the big thing that most people like don't get. So I always clarify that because this is literally what they use in the law. And this is why I explained this so well, because this is how this is what human trafficking is basically. Now, there's processes to it, right? There's a lot of steps to it. And like a lot of times, man, like, you know, there's countries that they sponsor human trafficking, and they sponsor childs of war, and they sponsor unlawful child labors and stuff like that. So that's called state-sponsored HT is what I call it. And I say HT because if I talk about this on TikTok or on YouTube or something,
Gets flagged, yeah.
Yeah, it gets flagged. So like I learned that lesson on my show because I had a woman that I had worked a ton of cases with, and she was telling about these cases because I was like real shy in the beginning. And we ended up realizing all these things. But the thing is, man, is like it happens everywhere. And the reason why it happens, I could tell you right now, it's for financial gain, or because people just want to be fucking evil. Like that's my personal opinion about it, right? That's Ricardo Aviles' opinion, is because people are evil motherfuckers and they want to do shit until someone comes in and they realize that that's not the right thing that they should do. In other countries, it happens, unfortunately, because they have shortage of labor. And since they don't have child labor laws, like that's one of the things that they do. In other countries, what happens is that they're at constant war and they're losing people so much, they just start going into the villages and they take the kids. I had that experience in Iraq, actually. I had my very first ever encounter, and I realized this like a couple weeks ago when I was teaching the classes. I was in Iraq, and we had a kid that was, we had a person, we didn't know it was a kid at the time, that was assassinating our Iraqi police at checkpoints. And every day we would come in and we'd see them, unalived. And for like 2 weeks, we started analyzing the pattern, and then we started setting up at checkpoints. And one day I was with a sergeant of mine, and when we approached someone that was on the steering wheel, you can normally tell, man, like you see how people get tense, and you can kind of get the vibe.
Read the
Like, this
body
ain't
language,
right. Yeah. And immediately, like I saw him, like he looked at me and he pulled his hand down, and I just pulled up on my 249 and started walking towards him. And I was like, dude, I at first thought it was a V-bit. I was like, he's reaching. And then when I took 2 steps forward, I was like, oh, this was a bad idea. It could be a V-bid, which is a vehicle-borne IED, which leaves a hole as big as a probably 2,200 square foot house, I would say. If not, maybe a little smaller, maybe a little bigger. I'm not a bomb guy. I've just seen the pictures. And then when I approached him, we realized he was reaching for a gun. And then my NCO caught him, and we had him teed up, and we caught him. He was a 16-year-old kid, man, that was just told, hey, you go in and you do this. And that was like my first real, like my first ever, like, oh shit, this is real. Like, this is not a fuck around joke. Like,
that they're using kids, or they're using people. They're pawns. They're essentially pawns. They're expendable.
Well, they're just brainwashed is the thing. That's one thing we could say, because they're going to look at it as, and that's the thing. Another thing is like the difference between terrorists and a gang is one is for financial gain and the other one is to promote a political or religious agenda. Right.
Yeah.
So like, that's what's so dangerous about this is that you grab kids from a young age and you teach them how to fight, and you teach them how to kill. Bro, that's a dangerous combination. There's a lot of things in the brain that haven't developed. So that's one of the things that like I came to realize was when I started putting the course together, was that people really don't know about this. And, man, unfortunately, some people take it as it's just a scare tactic, but like, man, technology has made it so much easier for people to like recruit and like target and like study, because dude, everybody wants to post fucking pictures of their kid.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to say, oh, I'm here doing this. Like when I do that, it probably happened a week ago, 48 hours ago, 3 days ago, like, cool, you want to do that, but like don't. And still, like, I'm very skeptical. That's why I try to like post memes and post positive things about the podcast and stuff, and like articles that I like, because I'm sorry, I have like a damn skin rash right here. It's bothering me. And like,
well,
the thing is,
I
man,
know what you're talking about, that where like you're telling people on Facebook that, hey, I'm out of town. Here's the skyline in the background of the hotel I'm staying at. And then somebody can look at that and say, well, okay, they're not home. So
yeah, man.
let's
and like,
have fun.
I like to
and
post.
Then if we wanted to look at them and say, Let's see. That looks like it's probably about 8 floors up on that side. So it's pretty easy to try to figure out where that is. So, but we live in this TikTok generation where we have to document every single thing we're doing at the exact moment that we're doing it.
See, and that's why, like, what I like about TikTok, besides that they're pretty honest about stealing your data, is that you can, man, because there's good and bad, and this is the thing that I tell people when they talk to me about technology and their kids, and I go, listen, man, like, you just really got to explain to the kids, like, how bad something can go, because I think if you explain to a child how something can go, they have two reactions. That'll never happen to me, which then that means there's a level of ignorance that they don't understand something, or they're terrified and they go, okay, I need to be aware. And then you have a third option where they're terrified and they don't want to do it. And you don't want to paralyze someone with fear, because that's exactly that's not a way to live.
No, we did that the last 3 years of COVID. Pretty much.
Where do you live at?
I'm in Ohio.
Oh, should move down to Missouri. I don't know what restrictions you're talking about. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah, outside of St. Louis, I'm sure you guys were.
I'm in Springfield.
What was this thing?
Yeah, St. Louis shut down completely. St. Louis, it was pretty wild. It was pretty wild, man. But
you should teach this class. You should go to Joplin then. Just go to Joplin. Just rent out the Yakov Smirnoff Theater and teach a class there.
Dude, I don't think that many people would come to see this class, to be honest with you. Like what I'm teaching you right now is basically the whole class from my head, because I memorize my classes. I have 7 classes in my catalog, and I memorize all of them, and all of them are 3 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, like, I write everything down, because it's like I try to memorize, like, the things that I feel like, hey, this is super important, So, like, here, we're talking about, like, the key concepts and stuff like that, like forced labor and forced sex, which, again, just because someone is a sex worker, right, which that's a terminology that you'll hear too, that doesn't necessarily mean that, number one, they're a prostitute, and number two, that they're being trafficked. People are very confused. And I've seen this in law enforcement where they'll get a call saying someone's being trafficked, and the girls are like, nah, man, he just gave me $60 and I'm gonna suck his dick. And, like, the cops are, like, confused because they don't have the education to deal with it. And 2 states that I know do fucking really well with this, which I'd love to, like, do work with them. 3 states actually, is New York, Georgia, and Florida. Like, those 3 states, man, their task force on HT is on fucking point. Those dudes do not fuck around. Like, they do not fuck around at all. I've heard stories from interpreters that have translated, and they're like, dude, those guys look like NFL quarterback linebackers. Like, when you see those guys walk in, you're like, oh dear Lord. So that's the type of stuff that you see, So if you keep scrolling down a little bit, you'll go to a part that says types of trafficking, right? Which is what we were talking about. I think it's types of trafficking? Technology, which we talked about, right? And that's a little statistic there. I don't know how 100% is. I'm about 90% sure, because I can't recall where I pulled it from, but I have my notes I left my notes in my house, so I apologize for that. And obviously the most exposed people, which some people are pretty surprised, man. Hotel people, waitresses, teachers, truck drivers, mail people, beauty salons, barbershops, massage parlors, and malls, like mall people. Those are the people that are going to see him the most. They just don't know what they're looking for, man. And, like,
yeah.
The number one thing that I always tell people is, man, just a simple hi. Like, a simple hi sometimes, because you got to understand, these people want to be incognito, right? So that's why they'll go to restaurants and stuff like that. And if you see somebody that's, like, holding on to a kid a little too much, the kid's not really reacting to them. And again, man, this is situational, right? This is why I always tell people, man, take a fucking course on, like, how to read body language and stuff, because the kid might be pissed off at his dad, the kid might have just lost the game and he's just not answering. And the kid's like, man, if you've ever been around kids for 10 minutes, or if you have kids, you understand what I'm talking about. Kids can be a little difficult, but trust me, I've been there. I've been in these cases where it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. Shit, like it's a duck, So that's just one of the main things that I think everybody should really know, because if you're in those fields right there, man, you are a frontline person to know hey, this person comes here often. They have like a weird tattoo of a number, you know, or hey, this person comes here and when they come in, this person drops them in and that person stays next to them the whole time. Or hey, the same person drops them in, you know. That's why customer service is really important, man. Like this is what I tell people all the time. Like customer service super important because it'll let you know like what's going on in someone's life if you look hard enough, you know. Um so like that's like the main thing that I tell people, man. If you work in those places, like it's crazy the amount of things that you have. And then, you know, you have websites that have um full open displays of sex trafficking and people just don't know it, right? So if you scroll down, go to a part that says there's a part that talks about translating or human trafficking language and whatnot. Go to that right there. It should be further down because we've talked about all these things.
Mhm.
CPS, that's just basically, you know, that's
Organ
what
harvesting.
harvesting. Yeah. Unlawful recruitment, which is basically what we talk about. Child soldiers, we gave an example of that. Okay, right here. And this is the part that everybody loves about this course. And for the people, your audience who has kids, they're gonna love this. For the interpreters who took this class, don't worry. Give you a discount next time. So emojis are used a lot nowadays because you have to have a probable cause on something in order to do something. And if you do a T3, which is a wiretap basically, and yes, those things are real. The government can get a subpoena to listen to your phone. It's hard as shit, but they can get a subpoena to listen to your phone conversations and text messages. There are certain things that cannot be utilized, such as conversations between attorney-client privileges, unless there's certain circumstances there. And in some cases, conversations with children and conversations between spouses, right? So one of the things that I tell people is if you look at here is like all the emojis are like things that you really, yeah, like a pill. It could be a Xanax. And actually that Xanax isn't correct. It's red on top, yellow at the bottom would be Xanax. And if it's sideways like this, not like this, it's normally Adderall.
Okay.
Or normally
Interesting.
they'll just say, hey, you have some A's? You got some A's? Or you got some ads? Like you'll hear that a lot. Um, and again, this is really important. I want you to look at these because if you keep scrolling down, scroll down a little more. Okay. So that right there is a real ad that was posted on, I'm not going to say the state that we got a picture of. And what this person's telling right here is the pumpkin. I'm not aware of that. I'm still trying to find it. The Christmas tree means they have really good weed. This right here means they have dabs. This right here means that they do couples, like they'll engage in sex with couples. And this right here obviously means they'll take multiple penises, like it's telling you how many penises they'll take.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So, and then normally you'll see it says tie and then the age, right? And you'll look at this and you'll be like, bro, that's wild. Keep scrolling down. We got that already. It's the same thing, which I put it because I like how it looks. Right here, right? So like right here, you see a flag. You'll see the chocolate, which is representing the color of their skin, the snow, and you see a person with a phrase. So the snow means cocaine, like if you have cocaine or maybe they have cocaine, and then the face means that they'll do blow with you.
Okay.
So like this is a whole language that a lot of guys covered, and like over the years working cases, I was privileged enough to sit with attorneys that taught me all these things, that they were in the task force, and talk with law enforcement people that were like able to like explain this to me. What I really love to do is get someone who's worked and like get them in an interview. I
Yeah.
just don't know the legality of it is the problem.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I've seen the roses one where it's like, for 60 roses, you go, rose. Oh,
Yep.
what does rose mean?
It means, yeah, normally a rose means $100. That's why if you see multiple, it's per 100.
Yeah.
That's
So
what at least that's what I've been explained, right? And man, by God, bro, every time I've sat down with interpreters and they bring me things, like it's exactly what it is, man. And even with law enforcement people. So the horn emoji basically means that they're very promiscuous.
okay.
And you see again, it says outcalls. You'll see something like that. And to my understanding, outcall is they'll visit you, or it's outside of whatever their residence would be. In would be in whatever their residence or place they're staying at, which you'll see that a lot throughout this. So if you keep scrolling down, and hopefully your audience, appreciates this. So
No,
yeah, you'll
I think
see.
this is very interesting, and
Thank
it's
you.
very educational. I think people need to know about this, especially with kids, because
Yeah.
I always think about this about my parents' generation. My parents are
Mhm.
boomers, and when basically 1980 hit, they stopped caring about pop culture and music and movies. It's like ever so often, oh, that might be that's hey, I like that Stevie Ray Vaughan or whatever. But they didn't follow new music, they didn't follow trends. But in the technology age, in this digital age, as a parent, as a grandparent, as somebody
Yeah.
who's
Yeah.
an aunt and uncle, they have to be up with it. They have to know what the next TikTok is. They have to know what the next Instagram. They have to be on top of all this stuff. Otherwise, kids are usually like 2 steps ahead of their parents, anyways. So the parents always have to continue playing catch up with this and
Yep.
understand this language.
Yep. So, and that's all, like all these right here. The crowns normally represent like there's a pimp or maybe there's not a pimp. That just depends regionally. Normally, like a bikini or something means that they'll wear that for like pictures and stuff and whatnot. The rainbow, I don't know, but I am assuming, and again, this is just what I'm assuming, is that they're LGBTQ pro. I'm not 100% sure. That's just what I'm guessing right there. Obviously, I don't have to say what the water means. I think we all know. The heart with colors normally represents an STD.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's weird because you see the water emoji or an eggplant, and I think people have kind of figured it out, like what
yeah,
those are.
yeah.
They're not as discreet. Like some of these,
No,
they're kind of discreet, like with the hearts, like the different color hearts. But
well, I'll
there's
give you
others where
one.
it's just pretty blatant. It seems.
Scroll down because the next one I'm 99% sure. Yep. So, nope, that's not the one. It's the one after this one, right there. So the growing hearts like that means that that person is underage.
Mm, really?
Yes, or
With the
a heart that's growing, it means that the person is underage.
okay, and then the crown is a pimp.
The crown, well, it's either a pimp or it can mean that it's two different things. And I apologize, I don't have my notes because I did not think you would ask me about this.
Sorry about that.
But I can absolutely, if anyone wants to know, you can absolutely call me. And this is a course that I'm opening up to the public pretty soon to like start educating people, which took me about a year and a half to build. And it's about a 3-hour course. And for the civilian people, we're probably going to offer like an hour and a half one. Because it's for interpreters, there's a lot more and there's a lot of videos and stuff like that.
So you're based out of Springfield, Missouri. You're
Yeah.
right in the middle of the heartland. I'm at the
Yeah.
kind of the beginning of the heartland in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned earlier about hubs, like trafficking hubs, whether it's
Yeah, that's actually a
human
good
or sex
question.
trafficking. When you think of, we've been hearing about the border when it comes to fentanyl and a lot of what's being brought in from the southern border of Mexico. We remember in the 1980s, the Miami Vice days, and Don Johnson of Miami was big with cocaine and coming from Colombia. But when it comes to sex trafficking, human trafficking, where are some of the big cities, states, port cities, or it doesn't even have to be from outside coming into the United States, that this is happening in the United States. It could happen in Missouri, could happen in Ohio. What are places that people should
it's
really
happening
start
in
to look
Missouri.
out for? What's that?
It's happening in Missouri. It's happening. It's happening right now as we speak.
You of course, being bilingual, is that's where you're going through a lot of these processes.
Yeah.
So where are the places that are like really big that either the media is not talking about or that people just don't know enough about?
Yeah. So if you could do me a solid and scroll down almost to the end, because this is the part that I really want to show people, is that right there. Go up. No. Don't fucking contact me. No, I'm kidding. That right there. That's one of the things that I want to talk about. So when it comes to this, I can't give you a good statistical or factual answer because I've been out of the game for a few years, right? And if you notice, I said the word game, which the game is basically also a word that you'll use that they'll utilize is to talk about the lifestyle. They call it the game. When I say the game, I mean like the interpreting for these victims and whatnot and these survivors. What I can tell you is that let's play this game, right? Let's play this game. Go ahead and can you go to Google, pull up Google Maps.
Okay.
We're going to play a little game here, right? And this is how I teach my class. It's the very same way. So it's funny that you caught me off guard, but I'm actually pretty well prepared. So you'll pull up Google and then type in Springfield, Missouri.
All right.
Yeah, there's like 50 something Springfields. Okay, perfect. Now, zoom out a little bit. Right there. All right, right there. Perfect. Right there. Zoom in a little bit. Just a little bit. Right there. Stop right there. Okay. So what do you see when you look at this, right?
I see almost dead set in the middle of the country. I
Okay.
see a
That's good.
You got
That's actually
a
really
major
good.
you got a major highway in I-44 that cuts across the entire state of Missouri.
Let me stop you right there. One major highway. Count how many highways you can connect to if you are in that town.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Holy Jesus.
8.
Wow.
8, right? Now I'll propose this to you, right? Look at the border. You see the border from Oklahoma to Missouri?
Yep, I've traveled on this before.
Do you know how far away that is from Springfield to Oklahoma?
Is it about an hour?
Maybe 2 hours, man.
Okay.
Now he's even scarier. Scroll down. Go south. Oh, there's Arkansas in 2 hours. So what you're looking at is avenues of entry and avenues of exit, right? If I'm in trouble, and this is like a little survivalist crap too, which you get taught in the military, or at least I did, is you want to have multiple points of entry, multiple points of egress, multiple points of exit, multiple points of escape, right? You got it right there, bro. This is a town that is predominantly ran by the military, major businesses, because it's a top 10 place to start a business. Has a lot of hair salon shops, massage parlor. You know what? Indulge me. Type in hair salons before Springfield, Missouri. Like
okay.
just add the word hair salons in Springfield, Missouri, and you'll see, hair salons. There you go. Watch this.
That's a bunch.
Right?
Oh, and then I also see hotels too. So
there
you go.
See? But what else do you see? The most important thing.
We have an airport.
There you go, right there. Points of entry, points of exit.
Yeah.
So that's what you look at is, okay, in this town, and this is what, if I was I don't want to say it like this, but if I was in a position of power, the number one thing I would look at is, okay, if something were to happen where we have someone that gets kidnapped, right? And we know within 2 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes, right? Because guess what? After an hour, what did we see earlier? Within an hour, you can be out of the state.
Yeah.
Now it's a federal issue because of jurisdiction. See what I'm saying? Like, this is how big the problem gets. And this is why the problem is so complex, because number one, a lot of agencies don't communicate with each other, because obviously there's budgets that we have to fight for, and everybody wants to have a bigger dick, and everybody wants to have the name of it, where it's like, just stop. Because I've seen this. And
do you have to deal with different precincts too, where you have federal as opposed to more local, like the local sheriff or anything, and then there's kind of like a jurisdiction situation?
Well, I've never had that issue when I had cases, thankfully. So I wouldn't be able to answer that from experience. Me guessing, I would say that obviously people are going to compare dicks, because it's like, who's going to get the case, you know? Because you got to understand one thing too, man. Like, in order for this to happen, there has to be a budget. So who's going to control that budget? Who's going to get it? Is it going to be the city? Is it going to be the county? Is it going to be the state? You know? So these are multiple things that happen. But when you look at it this way, man, look at all those salons right there. There's probably more than 10 salons, right?
Mm-hmm.
If all of those people knew what they were looking for, I'm willing to bet you $1 that someone would find something in 24 hours. How much would you be willing to bet? In your own town, I'm be willing to bet that if you pulled up your own town and you typed in the same thing, I guarantee you, if all those people listen to this and there's anything that they get, is just look at the people. Just look at them, bro. Look at them. I guarantee you look at somebody, it's going to look weird. And then what I always tell people is, listen, don't confront people, because guess what? You're not willing to die if you're wrong. Or if you're right, if you're right, if you're right or wrong, I don't think you'd be willing to die. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I tell people, because, dude, like, that's an asset. That person that they're trafficking is an asset. Wow. So You think of it as a business, unfortunately. That's an asset. Don't fuck with my asset, because that's how they are. That's why it's so dangerous, and a lot of people don't talk about it, because it takes a lot of money to move someone from one place to another, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah. Well,
Like a lot of money.
and what's interesting, so a few years ago, probably going back to 2015, is that probably the only thing I ever got nominated for when I worked in radio was an Associated Press award for our coverage of the opioid crisis. This is before, I think this is when we started hearing about what fentanyl and fentanyl were. And the one thing about
the
one thing about Ohio is that Ohio, even though it's, it's a medium-sized state, it's not the biggest state, but we do have major freeways that go through. That we have one of the Great Lakes, we have the Ohio River at the bottom, which is the second or third biggest river in the United States. You have major interstates from Interstate 90, which takes you from Boston to Seattle. 77 takes you from downtown Cleveland, Ohio, all the way down to South Carolina. 71, you have we have I-80, takes you from Parsippany, New Jersey to San Francisco. So we have major ways.
71, 75, 74, 70, 71, 80, 90. Holy shit.
And that's where
Columbus are the most. I mean, no, anywhere here, man.
Dayton is
there's
huge
so
too.
many. Yeah, because there's so Bowling Green. Look at that. That looks empty, bro. Somebody definitely could set up there. And again, I'm not saying this to I want to make this very clear. I'm not here to try to terrify people to
not trust any. You don't want to discriminate. You don't want to be openly prejudiced against somebody and just start thinking everybody is being way too paranoid.
Yeah, man. And here's the thing is I'm the type of person that I see the bad in everything. I'm pretty honest with myself. I see the bad in everything.
Oh, you went to war. You're a veteran, so you've seen it on that side. You've truly seen the bad.
Sure. That's one of the things. But the other thing is that when you do these cases at the level that I did, where you're basically those people's voices, and then you can't say shit, because then if you do say something, you're compromised, and then you can't be the interpreter. And then if I can't be the interpreter, man, I can't make money. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So you really see a side of things that you really never expect. And when people are alone with their attorneys, they become very fucking honest. Very fucking honest. And you can't say anything because you took a vow of neutrality. So what I always tell people is don't get involved in this if you're going to be overly emotional and not be able to have not be able to have some sense of clarity of there's a process, there's a judicial system. The moment that you say, and this is when I stopped working cases, was I had a moment where I had a woman that from what I was told was she was being kept in a basement, and she had marks on her wrists from something pulling, and she was 5 months pregnant and she didn't know it.
Wow.
And she ended up, from my knowledge, what ended up happening after that was that it came out to be that she was here illegally, something about her visa, that their family was trying to keep her here. And then when the family got interviewed, I left and I didn't interpret, because my first thought was, I'm going to go and just choke these people. And there's nothing nobody in here can do to stop me, because I'm going to fucking choke you. I'm going to put my hands on you, and that's going to be it. I'm just not going to let go. You're going to have to tase me. So the moment that I started having those feelings, I was like, nope, I need to stop. I need to stop.
You have to take yourself out.
Yeah, you have to, man. And people don't do that. Even law enforcement people. I have friends who work in law enforcement that they've quit law enforcement to go do something else because they had one case that they were like, oh, this is the case. And they're honest enough with themselves to go, I need to move on to something else, or the darkness is going to start fucking staring back. And that's a really fucking hard thing to do, because I didn't, dude, there was a lot of cases that I didn't get paid for, because obviously people don't expect an interpreter. They don't know how to use an interpreter. It's not an expense that most people can accrue. So it's one of those things that it's well, it is what it is, but you get to a point that you've seen so much that you have a skewed view of the world. And the problem with that is where other people see something nice, I go, how can this go to shit? And that's not the best place to be, especially if you have kids, that's why I love being a dad, because it's really helped me see that all those things that I did and all those things that I saw really helped me realize like how bad something can go, but what to look for was like the best thing that it helped me, man. But it took a while to like really like sit down and analyze and like, because I have notes. I have notes of all my cases, all my cases. Because as an interpreter, you'll take notes because you always laugh, have a pen and paper. So yeah, man, that's why I try to tell people like, just be wary, man. Like, just know your neighbors, dude. Like, dude, I know almost all my neighbors. They may not know my name, but I know their name and I know where they live. And you know, if I go outside, I see a car that doesn't fit in my neighborhood, bro, I check that up. Let me see. You know, just take a mental note of it. It's like, oh, that car doesn't go there. Oh, so and so got a new car. That's nice. Good for them. But that's the thing, man, is people want a quick formula and it just doesn't work. And
There's
when
a
it comes
balance.
to that,
You would seem like there's more of a balance too, because you don't want to be overly paranoid where you see a truck. It's like, I don't recognize that truck. And you try to call the VIN number and the license plate and everything. And then people are afraid of being Karens. Like, oh, you're
oh,
really,
dude, I don't give a fuck. I'm nice to you. Hey, man, how's it going, dude? You okay? Oh, okay, no problem. I just make a mental note because I'm so like like when people see me, they're not scared of me. Like they're just not because they just see this little short, fat Puerto Rican Joe Rogan looking dude, and they're like, oh, he's so harmless. And it's like, yeah, I would not think of that. I'm wary of everybody because you don't know what that person's done. You don't know what state of mind that person's in. You don't know what that person's gone through throughout the day, and not everybody has good emotional control. So I'm always nice to somebody and I always try to have a positive interaction with people until they give me a reason to. And there's only probably 4 things that would make me not have a positive interaction with people. But always, man, I always try to have a positive interaction with people because people are more honest when you're nice to them because they think you're gullible, unfortunately.
so they think
And
they can take advantage,
they think they can take advantage of
but
you. And that's how I
you have to play
know.
4D chess.
See, you get it, my man. So that's the thing is like, that's why I'm like, I just, I just look and observe. Because it's real shitty, man. And like the way that I view the world, unfortunately, is unless I'm around my wife or my kid, like I view the world as garbage. Like the world is just fucking trash, bro. Like that's just how I view it. And it's unfortunately from years and years of like seeing what's out there that it's like, oh, this is fucking garbage. Like this is how bad someone can go. That's why I always tell people, man, like when I talk to people who say they're mad, like, oh, I'm so angry. I'm like, dude, you're not angry. Like you're hurt. And that's a big thing that people don't understand is the difference between being pissed off, angry, irate, and hurt. And like there's levels to it because dude, you see that in jujitsu, man. Like you see guys in jujitsu been training for years and you see their hands and you're like, oh, this dude really hates himself or he must really love jujitsu, you know? So yeah, man, that's just the wild thing about it, man. You just got to be careful.
Well, that's you mentioned about Brazilian jiu-jitsu and you mentioned Joe Rogan because I think to credit Joe, he's really helped put a lot of spotlight and did a lot for community when you're talking about the martial arts or anything from just mixed martial arts and all the way up to UFC.
Mr.
And
Rogan's done a lot more for Brazilian jiu-jitsu than people think. And I think for the sports world, I'm not a big UFC guy. And I have friends like Mr. Rolly Delgado, who he was in the UFC, Violent Bob Ross. He was in the UFC before everything happened. And I have a few other friends that we've trained with that they've been in the UFC. And like, the problem I have, number one, is I don't understand the ranking system. So like I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I look at the IBJJF and the ADCC, the Abu Dhabi Combat Championship, which is like the Olympics of jiu-jitsu. It's every 2 years. Have you ever seen an an ADCC?
well, I'm not the I've seen it training, but I haven't seen it.
No, my man. Like you got to see one of our black belts won his weight division. I think he won the Open called Yuri Samoas. If you pull up 2022 ADCC and you just pull up one that like Flow Grappling does so fucking well. And you just pull that up, bro, and you just see the stadium of people just going fucking wild over matches. And like the matches in jiu-jitsu, they can be pretty slow and boring, which I understand. A lot of people don't understand the whole butt scooting thing, which in ADCC it's a different set of rules. That's what I tell people is like, look at the rules that they're playing by, and you'll understand what someone's doing. Because like when I used to compete at jiu-jitsu, I used to like have to prepare my game plan based on the tournament, because some tournaments award points in a different way. So it shifts your strategy to meld to your game. Like I'm a guard puller. Recently, I started playing stand-up because I've started to kind of see that I can play with it, and it's a weak area of me. But like, when you pull guard in ADCC, which pulling guard basically means where I sit down while holding and making a connection to your body, and I sit down. Normally, you don't really want to do that in a street fight because you would get kneed in the face. And normally, if you do that, you want to have a guard, a form of guard, which what a guard does is it prevents you from advancing. It puts roadblocks in order for you not to advance and punch me in the face. But dude, jujitsu, pulling guard. Okay, that's an example. So that's
just,
in the
just so people know what we're talking about when you mention
yeah. So what you're seeing in here is you see how one foot is forward and he's imitating his foot, right? And you see how he lowers and he's extending his hand to gauge the distance. But what he's also doing is he's also trying to set up. That's what I was gonna say. Trying to set up a judo throw, because that's why he's emulating the foot so he can step in on the outside. So when they're pulling guard, you'll see that both their legs come square. They put one foot in front of your opponent and then they square up. This is a way of pulling guard. The leg is obviously a barrier. I'm controlling in hands, and that's a guard, which a guard is not a position that you want to be in. If you roll with someone that has a very, very good closed guard, you would not be able to stand up. We have a guy who is one of the Gracies, and I can't remember. His name is Jack, and I can't remember Jack's last name right now, but he came to our school one day and he was teaching. He's like, if you have someone wrap in full guard, can they stand up? I go, of course they can stand up. He goes, they should not be able to stand up. And this is coming from Hoyler. He's a Hoyler black belt. This is coming from Hoyler Gracie. So dude, he came to the school and like he taught it, and I was like, oh, I know nothing. So like, that's why I always tell people like, yeah, just because you see somebody, because think about it, dude, my legs are wrapped around your waist.
Yeah.
So now I have the power of my legs and the power of my hands to control your upper body. Like that's why I tell people, like, you see in the UFC when guys pull guard. And again, that's also another thing, man. Like, you have to like strategize. If you look at guys like Mr. Ryan Hall, from 50-50 Jiu-Jitsu, Ryan Hall, everybody said that he was a leg lock specialist. Ryan Hall has countless wins by triangle. Countless wins by triangle, by the way. And in the UFC, heel hooks. Obviously, because if I heel hook you and I break your kneecap, you can't fight anymore. Like, yeah. That's just the thing. So again, that's where the strategy comes in play. But yeah, man, it's just, and again, you have rear naked chokes like you've seen, McGregor get in and all that other stuff. Yeah, Mr. Ryan Hall. You'll see him close the distance. He's closing the distance. You see the guy's putting his hand out because he's like trying to gauge, and he's just trying to get that leg in. He's trying to get him to step, There it is. Then he comes in, in, and that's a heel hook. He's turning the wrong way. See, the guy's turning against the cage. He's not expanding the leg. That's already out. He's going to use the cage to extend. Now he has an arm that he has an option to grab that arm or just push him in the face, punch him in the dick. Boom, that's it. That's his knee.
And it's that patience too. You can't just...
Oh, dude, yeah. At a higher level, you have to have patience because it's a game of inches. It's legitimately a game of inches. Like, yeah, see? He's gauging. Boom.
Oh, he found his opening right there.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, see, that guy's aware that he has to like control. But Ryan Hall, see now, okay, you want Ryan Hall on your back? Yeah, that's smart.
It's like
that was a beautiful. That's a beautiful
record
back
scratch.
Right
How did
there.
We get here?
Yeah, that's a beautiful back take, by the way. Yep, that's over.
We're done. Tap out.
Yeah. If you slap a rear naked choke on somebody, you should. If you can't finish, and you need to go practice like the rear naked choke like a couple thousand times, or your entries into the rear naked choke.
So before we wrap up, do you recommend that for people? Like if they're just training, like they're not going into any kind of competition, but because of, you mentioned with Rogan, how he's put a huge spotlight on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is you're starting to see a lot more people. They're kind of getting aware. They kind of see in a lot of municipalities, cops are not doing their job. So they're like, sometimes you might have to be like a vigilante and kind of take matters in your own
we can
hands.
talk about that. Police officers need way more training, my man.
Oh yeah.
I love when people say that the police are militarized. They may dress in a military fashion, but let me tell you something. As someone who spent a little bit of time in the military and who has friends that are still in, you do a shit ton of training in the military. Like the army, I knew the army was not for me after 5 years because it's constant fucking training. Hey, you're gonna wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you're gonna go to take this class. Well, what's this class about? Well, this class is gonna teach you about nutrition. And we need someone to teach about nutrition because every Wednesday you have something called sergeant's time, where for 8 hours you sit down with non-commissioned officers and leaders and you talk and you learn. And then you have weekly training, daily training, quarterly training, monthly training, bi-weekly training, 6 months, 3 months. Yeah. Like and yearly, which you have to complete your yearly training or you can't promote or advance. And then that becomes a problem because it kills the readiness of the unit. And then that's a problem. So number two, jiu-jitsu is probably, for me, in my opinion, one of the best things to do, and that every cop should train regularly, because I can control you in a manner that you're not going to understand what's happening. And if you roll with like new people, right? Like when you roll with like new white belts, you're just toying with them. Like I don't even like, and this is just a thing we do at our gym, is I'm not going to choke you 10,000 times while we're rolling if you're a new person, because that's just discouraging. I'm just being an asshole. Now, again, that depends on the training. If it's competition training, right, then that's a completely different fucking animal. You chose to be in here, good sir. So it's competition
you're sparring,
training. Yeah, we're trying to fucking kill each other. Like this is competition training. This is for like, there's different ways of training. We can train for speed. We can train for muscle memory. We can train for competition, right? Which basically is forcing your game plan down someone's throat. And then you have, what a lot of hobbyists call, it's like, oh, daily training, which I don't think there's such thing as a person who's a hobbyist in jiu-jitsu, man. I have a hard time explaining that. Maybe someone can educate me that, because when I go train, dude, I go train, and it's not fun 90% of the fucking time, to be honest with you. Like the other day, I was the lowest ranking belt, and it was all our competition black belts. That was not a fun 2 hours, man. Like it was not a fun 2 hours, dude.
Doesn't sound like it.
No, it's not. You're the bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah, but these are things that people kind of have to do. And like I said, I mean, my dad and my grandfather were police officers, and they would both tell you, especially my dad, knowing that, especially with, affirmative action or whatever, that they're lowering the bar of police training, and it's going to take some people, like a girl who's like, living in New York City, probably should take. You don't know who's around the next corner. You should probably take one of these classes.
Everybody should take something. You should take something. Listen, man, I don't think jiu-jitsu is for everybody. I really don't. And I don't think Muay Thai is for everybody. And I don't think boxing's for everybody. Because here's the thing. Jiu-jitsu is really fucking hard. Jiu-jitsu is really, 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 really fucking hard. But the thing is there's a meme that I saw that, like, I don't even think it's funny. I think it's legit. You know how when someone sometimes says a joke and they're being funny, but the people who know, they're like, oh, he means that shit. Oh, yeah. You know what I'm saying? So there's a meme that I saw years ago that said jiu-jitsu is for everybody for the first 3 years. After 3 years, only people who are really dedicated and have discipline stay. And after 6 years, only people who have mental health problems stay. And it was like a joke, but it's like, bro, it's like, you talk to some people, it's like, why do you do this? Like, man, people used to fuck with me, and now I'm like, fuck around and find out, Yep. And again, that's just my view of it from my tiny purple belt perspective. This little 35-year-old Puerto Rican dude that does nothing. That's from my perspective. I always welcome people to explain to me, but man, every time I say that, even around like big top black belts, they're like, yeah, it's not for everybody, man. It's true. Not. Yeah. Your body goes through a lot. Your hands take a real bad beating, like but man, I tell you what, dude, at the end of the day, I feel pretty fucking confident that I don't want to fight with anybody. I don't want to fuck with anybody, because there's a million variables that can happen. But dude, you got to have some sort of preparation for it, man. And there's there's a lot of things that you can do. You know, there's verbal judo and stuff, which if you've been around cops, you know what that means. Verbal judo is, for the people listening, verbal judo is like when you're trying to de-escalate a situation by talking a person down, which is an art form, in my opinion. But yeah, man, it's a really, really, really scary world. You want to see something real crazy that you were talking about, if they should take this? I propose to every single one of your listeners this, and I did this the other day in my class, and I got 127 emails back. Go look up how many cops are in your state or in your city, and then go look up the population, because you can see how many people are post certified. Same way that I can know how many interpreters are in your town right now. I can pull up how many court certified interpreters are. I can pull up how many medical interpreters there are. Pull up how many cops there are in your state, and then pull up the population of your state, and you'll really shit a brick. Because that's a terrifying statistic to me that people don't talk about enough. And when I said that to people, I had like 3 people out of 127 people that emailed me. I had 3 people that said, I'm going to go to my nearest jiu-jitsu school and I'm going to sign up. And again, I don't do this to scare anybody. I just want people to realize, like, you know, man, there's that many people. Let's say that worst comes to worse, and, you know, every single cop is busy. What are you going to do? Like,
I just looked it up in my neck of the woods where I'm located. I'm not in a
scary.
big town. It's a population of 17,000 plus, and there are 30 police officers. So if I do the math, that means that there is 1 cop for every 576 people.
Do you think that motherfucker's gonna come? Fuck no, he's not, bro. Fuck no. That's a. And again, man, it's an awakening statistic, because I had someone explain this to me. They're like, go look up how many cops are in your state. I was like, bro, there's probably like 150,000. Nah, my man. No, bro. Less than 20. And the population,
and it's getting worse. There's a lot of blue flu going on. And to be honest, I really don't blame them.
Well, man, the thing is also it's very difficult when a cop is doing the right thing. And because I see both points of view, right? There's good cops, bro. There's good cops. I've met a few of them. The problem is that I think it was Roy Wood Jr. or Dave Chappelle who said it best. Roy Wood Jr. has a different joke, but I think it was Dave Chappelle who said, you can't expect someone that, no, it was Roy Wood Jr. Roy Wood Jr. said that people don't do the right thing for the right reasons. People do the right thing for the right price. And he has a whole joke about, and I'm butchering it, Mr. Roy Wood Jr. He has like a whole skit about pay a cop to snitch. $100,000 every time there's a successful snitch. And he goes on to the joke. He says, bro, they wouldn't make it through roll call. They're like, I know what you did, Sanchez. I know you planted those drugs. I need that 100K. I planted drugs on your locker the other day, Sanchez. Take me in. I need the 200K. You know what I'm saying? So
that's hilarious.
Oh, dude, Roy Wood Jr. is a genius.
Well, he should be the host of the Daily Show now, instead of this revolving door of woke
come on, Mazur, don't say
fake
that.
comics.
Don't say that, man. Don't say that. That's a big. He wouldn't be able to do stand up.
Yeah, true.
He wouldn't have time. He wouldn't have time to do stand up. That's the thing, because that's why late night host shows make so much money. Because, dude, I would kill to first of all, I would kill to interview Roy Wood Jr. or even open for him, because he's my number 1 favorite comedian.
I'll let you know. I have a good contact.
I feel like you're fucking with me. I don't know if you're being serious.
No,
I'm serious.
I'm serious. Yeah, I have a good contact. I can't guarantee. I can't make.
Oh no, don't ever guarantee shit. That's a smart thing. But we'll talk off the air. But the thing is, man, is like, it's really difficult to also be a cop, because, bro, there's a lot of people that are good cops. But unfortunately, you get into these situations where they get put in a situation where it's like, I did the right thing, but technically it's not the right thing because of this person, the way that we're portraying it, the way that it's being. Now you have an attorney that wants to go after your ass. And again, I'm not saying that there's not bad cops. I am saying that there needs to be a heavy reform on education for cops. And you see people like, and you can Google this person, Mr. Tom the Blast, who's been on 1FC, who's been on Tough, I believe. He's been on everything. He says it best. He's like, dude, I give cops free training. You know, how many cops you have that are black belts that have been training for at least 3 years? Bro, I'll take a cop that's trained jiu-jitsu heavily at least 2 to 3 times a week over a cop that hasn't, or even wrestled. I'll
Yeah.
take anything, bro. Sambo, wrestling, Krav. I'll take anything, dude.
Just because you got your degree in criminal justice doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a good police officer.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is I see how a lot of them are paid, and it blows my mind to think that if you pay someone $15, $18 an hour, that you can. It's just a lot, man. It's just a
No.
lot. It's just a lot, and this is coming from someone who's worked with law enforcement and has worked in law enforcement at the military level at least, and it's just mind-boggling the amount of things that I had to train. Like I went to the range I got sent to the fucking range every week. So like my finger, that's why my like finger bends like that, dude. You spend so much time on the fucking range. You spend a whole day shooting because it's like you have to know how to shoot. Oh, you got to spend time training. You got to do this. Like it's not fun, dude, and it's not for everybody, man. Like it's just not. And you deal with constant negativity. That's the other thing is the other problem is, man, that people don't really care about mental health, unfortunately. And that's why you saw on my slides that I said mental health. Because it's a thing, it's a whole block.
We pretend to, but in this country, we stopped. It's like when you'll have World Mental Health Awareness Day, and they'll bring somebody who's like a prominent A-list actor or celebrity or athlete. They'll go on the Today Show with Savannah Guthrie and say, "Yeah, I have a mental issue in my journey." It's like, well, good luck on that. And then when things actually come down, yeah, nobody really cares about your mental health.
No, they don't.
We don't care about our veterans. We don't care about people.
I'm glad you say that, because that's something that I've said before, because I've seen in court veterans PTSD used against them heavily. And then people wonder, and here's one thing. Have you seen the Terminal List?
No, I have not. No.
It's a very graphic show. Very graphic show. It's got Chris Pratt in it. There's a scene in the show, man, that like I started crying, dude. It really fucking pissed me the fuck off to this day when I think about it. There's a scene where I don't want to ruin it. It's about a Navy SEAL who there's drugs that are tested on them and bad things happen. It's really crazy. And there's one of the scenes that, because they accuse him of killing his family. And a guy goes, "Well, why would they do that? You're a decorated veteran." He goes, "That's exactly why, because no one gives a fuck if a war veteran kills his whole family because of PTSD."
Yeah. But we pretend to like one day a year, and then the rest of it.
Oh no,
is
2 days a year, bro.
Yes.
Three if you count 4th of July. Technically, I guess. But the rest of the time, bro, the moment. That's why I tell people, like, we're gonna, and mark my words, we're gonna reach a time in 10 years where being a veteran, people are gonna look at it as something that's dangerous, and they're not gonna give a fuck about us even more. That's why I laugh when people thank me for my service, and I go, if you really want to thank me for my service, send me a hand job and a beer my way, and then I'll really fucking believe you. So I married my wife, bro. That was my pickup line. She's like, "Oh my God, thank you for your service." I'm like, if you mean that, hand job and a beer.
Well, you should have told her, "Thank you for your cervix."
That's such low hanging fruit, but I like.
I know.
It. I know.
It's. I want to apologize for that joke to all the horny veterans.
You mean all the veterans then?
Yes, that's right.
Like, bro, I have never, listen, bro, trauma makes you fuck good. I hate to tell you that. Why do you think veterans are like, so, bro, my wife literally said, "Thank you for your service," a hand job, a beer. And then she said, "I think you're a great person." And I was like, oh my God. Like, that was it, bro.
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
It. That was it, bro. That was it. I'm telling you.
She gets down on both knees and you get down on one.
She's gonna listen to this and be like, "You lying motherfucker."
That's always fun.
No, well, man, dude.
If you're not going to listen about HT, if you're not going to listen to Ricardo about jiu-jitsu and anything like that, at least listen to his podcast, the Rico Podcast. Tell listeners where you can find it.
No, man. First of all, thank you so much for having me, dude. You've probably been the best interview that I have had in 4 years of being interviewed.
I appreciate that.
Pretty open. No, I fucking mean that. I really do. Most people will not engage in a conversation about this with me. Most people have never, and I have friends who come to my house and they don't talk about this on their show. I have friends who have shows that have a very, very heavy audience and they're too scared to talk about this. So man, greatly appreciate you having really great show. Second of all, you can find anything about me at the end. If you saw at the end, you can find me online on my email, rabdel del440@gmail.com. You can contact me there for anything. And even if for presentations and stuff like that, which I'm doing pretty heavily and I'm pretty booked right now for doing presentations for barbershops. I'm trying to concentrate on barbershops, massage parlor places, because I know there's a stigma against that because we've all seen the news. Big companies that need to have this training, man, in hospitals, bro, because it needs to be informed. So you can find that at you can find my courses too on transinterpreting.com, which are going to be open to the public pretty soon. All my courses are worth CUs. So if you're a person that needs credits, like law enforcement need post credits and stuff like that, all that I do all of that. And you can find me on Richard Aviles on Facebook. You can find me on language_ninja on Instagram. And you can find the podcast on Rico Podcast everywhere on TikTok and everywhere, man. And dude, thank you so much for having me. I greatly appreciate this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to get that word out, and I was really happy to get a chance to talk to you. And it gets serious, it gets heavy, but it's the reality that we got to deal with right now. We could joke all we want and bullshit on a podcast, but then ultimately the reality. Well, that's what's great about having the podcast is that you do deal with what you dealt with in the war. What you're doing as a job and trying to help the process and with interpreting. And then you can just kind of go like, look, I'm going to do a podcast. And then we just hang out and, chit chat with friends and just, tell stories and everything. It's like it's such a nice come down for people where you realize how serious life is. And then you can just sit behind a microphone and just go like, yeah, we got an hour. Let's just have fun. Let's just shoot the shit.
Yeah.
So it's a nice feeling of catharsis.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate it, dude. And to your listeners, thank you so much. Like if you're listening to this,
so thanks everybody for
it.
listening to the Check Your Brain podcast, and I appreciate it. My name is Tony Mazur, and hit the subscribe button if you're listening to if you came across this on the Rico Podcast or Check Your Brain podcast wherever you're listening to this, and check out my Patreon at patreon.com/Tony Mazur. Thanks everybody, and thank you, Ricardo. Thanks for doing the show.